This is the Living Computers Museum in Seattle, Washington. It's founded by Paul Allen. It's closed now ever since COVID and his death, and you can't get in. But guess which one of these cars is mine? Hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to my shop. I'm Dave Plummer, a retired software engineer from Microsoft, going back to the MS-DOS and Windows 95 days. By far the most interesting and well-equipped computer museum that I've ever seen was Seattle's Living Computer Museum, founded by Paul Allen. It's actually plural, Living Computers Museum. Not only did it almost have every important computer imaginable, they were all alive. The dedicated crew there painstakingly restored, upgraded, and maintained the systems to the point that for a lot of them, the more modern ones, you could even telnet into them from anywhere in the world. But before we mourn its passing, let's celebrate two serendipitous things. First, I visited the museum in February 2020, just weeks before the final closure, and got some great footage. The other is that Christie's auction house has been very gracious in granting me access to tour the collection privately, so I'm about to take you behind the scenes to see a collection that's been hidden from the public since COVID. We'll start with some footage that I collected from the museum before it closed, and then we'll move right into the tour. I had to organize the information somehow, and so I went chronologically. We're going to start with the really old classic iron and then work our way forward through the years. So hang in there until the era that you're personally nostalgic about comes along. But if you're about 20 years older than me, we'll be starting right in your area. I said if you're 20 years older than me, we'll be starting in your area. So I'd start with something that you absolutely can't see today because I took this footage about 5 years ago with an old iPhone pre-stabilization. So please forgive the quality. But if you see this, you're seeing, tons of Altairs and M-size just stacked to the ceiling, S100 computers, Altair disk drives, all kinds of stuff that would just be incredibly valuable and incredibly awesome to own if you could get a hold of it. I'm not sure what became of all of this equipment. It's not part of the auction, so that's a question for somebody else. But holy cow, look at all the Altair. There's an Intellect up there. We've got a bunch of Challengers here. Not sure what's on the bottom row. Wow, it's just a lot of stuff. Now we get into the beige era. We've got all kinds of Commodore 64s and TRS-80s, Texas Instruments, Timex, Atari, Amiga. Wow, we've got quite a few backup units here. Let's see what else we've got. Ooh, original boxes too, I see. Oh, we've got all kinds of cassette decks, modems, numeric keypads, paper tape printers, all kinds of stuff. Oh, look at the floppy drives. Oh my goodness, it's a wall of floppy drives. Those look like Apple, I'm guessing. Well, left is Commodore, the middle is Apple, right is Atari. Looks like, oh yeah, here we go. There's the set of 1541s. What else we got in here? And it wouldn't be fair if we didn't have Mac floppy drives and Mac hard drives and Apple II drives and TRS-80 Model 100s, it looks like. Tons of calculators. PC Junior peripherals. Oh, where's my wife? She had a PC Junior. She's got to know about this. And all kinds of weird games like Pong Sports. And finally, I'll just kind of pan back around this room here to give you a sense of scale. Remember, it's got 4 walls, and I'm only showing you 2 of them, but they're kind of a treasure trove, that's for sure. Or they were at one time. Just as I did back in the real old days, I like to begin my time at the museum in a wood-paneled room surrounded by 8-bit computers and old stereos. Unfortunately, they have just such a room, or they did. It's not there anymore, but I took a picture when it was. Whereas instead of a TRS-80, if you're a couple years younger than me, you might have spent your time with an Atari VCS, Intellivision, ColecoVision, or one of the others. And no doubt a lot of you grew up with a computer lab that looked something like this in your school. You know how many office buildings I've been to in Canada that have expensive works of art in the lobby? Wouldn't you rather have a Cray-1? It even serves as furniture. The museum even had an 80s arcade, which is of course where you would find me playing Tempest, because I have the world record on that game. I did stop by and play a few rounds. I only got up to about 520,000 because I was actually supposed to be chaperoning a school event, but I set a few scores, so I got all the top 3, which are stored in ROM, or EA-ROM. And of course, no Nerd Heaven would be complete without the DSKY from the Apollo guidance computer. Not sure the provenance on this one, but of course it is real. I'm not sure if it's flowing or not. This is Miss Piggy, friend of Kermit, one of the 2 PDP 1170s that we had at Microsoft and that were being retired as mail servers at about the time that I started in the early 90s. I was really curious about this machine and was interested in actually trying to acquire it, but it's not part of the auction and it's no longer at the museum, so it's gone somewhere. If anybody knows where this machine is, please let me know in the comments. So before there were computers, there were mechanical card processors that could do things like sort punched cards alphabetically based on last name, but through a purely mechanical plugboard arrangement. This Univac 1004 is kind of an early example of digital processing in that it had almost 1K of memory, which could run a program that would actually do the card sort for you. It doesn't sound like a lot of memory, but it's probably enough to process cards and sort them and group them and do the other kind of work that they were doing. Machines like this serve as an example of the bridge taken between mechanical data processing and later electronic data processing. Here we have a nice DEC PDP-5 all the way back from 1963, complete with what looks like to be a fast line printer, many knobs, and a very cool control panel. I don't know a great deal about the PDP-5. I know that it's like a 12-bit word length, which is a little different, but all machines were not byte machines until the late 60s, early 70s. Now, between you and me, I've got something of a fascination for the 1960s design language, and I really like this control panel. I'd like to have this machine just for the control panel. And I would not take it off the machine, but, just for the panel. As you can see, it's a huge unit, so looks affordable, but make room for it. The CDC 6500, introduced in 1967 at $8 million, was a groundbreaking supercomputer from Control Data Corporation. It combined 2 CPUs from the CDC 6400 with 10 peripheral processors, pioneering Seymour Cray's parallel processing architecture. This design enabled the CDC 6500 to achieve an unprecedented speed of 1 million instructions per second, or 1 MIP, making it the fastest computer of its time. Unfortunately, when it was initially retired, all of the cables inside were cut during the machine's removal, and so the museum staff had to painstakingly recreate each one of these bundles. If you think that's a lot of bundles, wait till you see what's inside the bundles, because each one of these bundles contains a whole bunch of wires that are then terminated within the machine like this. So as you can imagine, I'm sure many went insane trying to reproduce all of this, but apparently they managed to finish it and it runs and works. Access to the internals is through these doors which open up and give you access to what I guess is considered a backplane of sorts. Some of the more modern PCB-looking replacements are actually replacements for failed modules that are like memory modules, and so they've built solid-state ones to replace the failed ones because you just can't get them anymore. Here we can see what looks to be the pump for the cooling system, and above that we have the bootstrap panel. It seems to be one row for every actual instruction, and you've got instructions at 1, 2, 3, and all the way down, so you get 14 words in which to program your bootloader with the toggle switches. This is a DEC PDP-7A mini computer from 1967, serial number 113. It's got a customized display table to control it. It's got a Teletype ASR 33, it's got an HP display 1300A, and a later Northern NS 630 display. It's got a nuclear data 160 PS and a nuclear data ND 161, and I don't know what those things are, but they look pretty cool and they would look really great in your home lab. The lab where this machine was operated added this custom control panel that allows you to store, retrieve, and analyze all the various nuclear experiment shenanigans that you've undertaken that day. And like most of the machines here in the museum, this one too is built and ready to run. As you can see, they've installed switching power supplies to augment or replace the original linear power supplies that are still there, but it really helps cut down on power draw and the resultant noise and heat. This entire lot goes as one, all the machines included: a Zenith Z19, an NEC PC-8001A, which I have never seen an example of before. Here we have an IBM PC original with a very fancy monitor. I'm not quite sure, but that does not look like the standard size monitor for the IBM PC. Maybe I'm wrong. We have a VIC-20 here with a Commodore. I can't tell if it's a 1702 or a 1701, but a nice condition monitor. Here we have a DataPoint 3600, now what looks to be a TI-99 4A. And most of these machines all come with discs and manuals and the original boxes in some cases. And I'm guessing from the lack of a numeric keypad that this is an early level 1 TRS-80 and an early PET 2001 with a blue label, blue bezel, and chiclet keyboard. And a very nice early original Apple II along with 2 drives and a very cool Sanyo monitor. The Cray-2, introduced in 1985 by Cray Research, was a groundbreaking supercomputer designed by Seymour Cray. Known for its immense speed and power, it held the title of the world's fastest computer, capable of reaching 1.9 gigaflops. Its architecture used vector processing, allowing it to handle larger datasets efficiently, and with a clock speed of 244 MHz, it also supported up to 512 megabytes of RAM. Huge for the day. One of its most innovative features was its unique cooling system. The Cray-2 is submerged in a special fluid called Fluorinert, which circulated through the machine to dissipate heat. This gave the machine its nickname, the world's most expensive aquarium. It comes complete with a waterfall feature. The Cray-2's compact cylindrical design was intended to reduce signal distances and boost performance. It was used in high-demand fields such as weather forecasting, fluid dynamics, and nuclear simulations. Although only a very few units were sold, the Cray-2 left a lasting legacy in the world of supercomputing, pushing the boundaries of performance and design. This is the older of the two PDP-10s featured in the auction. It consists of the CPU with table and control panel, tape control unit, processor bays 2 and 3, core memory unit, a data control unit, and a DF10-C data channel. The KA-10, introduced by DEC in 1966, was the first in the PDP-10 series of mainframe computers. The KA-10 was known for its reliability and versatility, supporting time-sharing and batch processing. It played a significant role in advancing computing capabilities during the 1960s and 70s, serving as a workhorse for universities, research institutions, and government agencies. The Xerox Sigma 9 was a mainframe that was released originally by Scientific Data Systems, which Xerox purchased in 1969. The Sigma 9 was one of the most powerful models in the series and was designed for business, scientific, and data processing applications. On the left are the disk packs, in the back are the tape drives, and in the center are the operator consoles. And here is the main front switch panel, which is actually pretty beautiful. The Sigma 9 used a full 32-bit architecture, which was pretty significant for its time, as most others were 16 bits. It also supported a full virtual memory system, which was a cutting-edge feature in the 1970s. This allowed the system to use disk space in lieu of physical memory, in other words, the virtual memory systems that we're accustomed to today. Here we see another nice ASR teletype, but it's what it's next to that's more interesting. This is a Microll from 1973 from France. Here we can see its video terminal, and it is considered by many people to be really the very first microcomputer because it predates the MSI and the Altair. It features 1 to 4 kilobytes of RAM as well as an Intel 8008 CPU. Here we have a DEC System 10, better known as a DEC PDP-10. This is billed as the computer that Paul and Bill learned to code on, although it's probably the same as the computer as opposed to the actual one. I don't actually know. All I know for sure is that at Lakeside, the mums had got together and they had leased computer time from a local company on a PDP-10, and that's how Bill and Paul got their first exposure to programming, using an ASR33 teletype hooked up to a modem that was connected to a phone line that phoned into this system, or a system just like it, and allowed them to program. One cool thing about a PDP-10 is that it's got a PDP-1140 inside of it just to help it boot up. And this machine has been updated by having all the power supplies and everything are still there in our original condition, but now you have modern switching supplies augmenting them, so they're not really doing any of the work with the old linear power supply. It's a great way to keep the power and heat down on a modern installation. Here we have a very minty original MSI, slight bend to the corner there, but all the buttons look great. Next up we have a televideo console, which I confess I do not know a great deal about. But after that we have a Sol terminal, which is in very nice condition. You don't see these very often, and this one has either been very well restored or very well preserved. Either way, it's incredibly nice, and you see it features 2 disk drives as well. I assume those drives belong to the Sol, because it wouldn't make much sense for them to be just connected to what looks like a dumb terminal with televideo. This next lot is comprised of early Microsoft source code to some of the very early products, as written by Paul Allen, Bill Gates, Monty Davidoff, and Mark McDonald. Here we can see some of it even says the Albuquerque School District, still is, guess where they were doing their time sharing at the time. And this is disk code for 8080 Basic by Bill Gates. It's a macro file. And we could critique the code, but I don't have that kind of time today. All I remember is that pointer file equals drive pointer. That seems important. Here's the case for the Apple I. It's got the original Apple I keyboard, and I believe pretty much everybody had to make their own actual case, which is why no two look quite alike. This one does have pretty good provenance, as you'll see in the auction details, and is expected to bring quite a high price. Here we have an ASR35 teletype. This is one of those things that you kind of already know what it is, and you know that you want one, or you have no need for. This would be the loud and aggressive machine that you would use to interface with, let's say, an old PDP-1134. If somebody had one of those, it'd be handy. And for something a little different, we have a set of 200 or so, almost complete set actually, of Byte magazines going from 1975 up through about 1991. This is the DEC System 2020, which is effectively a scaled down or a smaller size PDP-10. It's in the same family with a 36-bit architecture and so on, so it's really a scaled down mainframe more than a scaled up mini. For storage, you can see it's rocking a disk pack on the side as well as a large tape drive. And here we have a Xerox Star, which was revolutionary for its time, introducing many concepts that would later become standards in personal computing, such as icons, folders, and the desktop metaphor, all of which was mercilessly appropriated by Microsoft and Apple in the years afterwards. However, it was not commercially successful due to its high price and limited market appeal. And here we have a nicely equipped Apple Lisa with its 5 MHz 68000, and we have the case where the Apple One would be if the Apple One were here, but it's in New York. And finally, we have a Next Cube here. The Next is sporting a 68030 at 25 MHz, and they start at about 4 MB of RAM and go up from there. And although this compact 286 portable might look rather pedestrian, it's a very nice example, and better yet, it is Paul Allen's own personal computer from back in the day. And that is ultimately what makes this machine interesting enough to include in the auction. Now, since the PDP-11 doesn't appear to be part of the collection, I'd be remiss if I didn't broadcast the important message that I'm still searching for a great PDP-1170 of its own. I want at least a full stack with CPU, tape reader, and ideally some storage. And I'd prefer the earlier burgundy color scheme. If you've got one where the panel has been replaced with a diagnostic setup, I've got an original panel to make it whole again, so drop me an email through the channel homepage if you've got a lead on a well-preserved system. As for the museum itself, Paul Allen passed away in 2018. The future of the museum was at best up in the air at that point, and then COVID hit. Long story short, the museum never reopened. From what limited combination of insight and gossip I've managed to acquire, Paul didn't make provisions for the museum as an ongoing concern after his death. His sister, the primary heir, apparently decided it isn't one of those things that she wanted to fund, and despite a seeming abundance of local billionaires in the Seattle area that owe their fortunes to the very machines in this museum, none of them were sufficiently compelled to become the patron. But I gotta catch myself, because one lesson I internalized early in life was not to count other people's money. And so while I don't begrudge anyone for not stepping up, it's still a bad situation in that all this hardware collected and working in one place and with a team to support it will be scattered to the winds of individual collectors not unlike myself. And while I'm privileged to have some nice old hardware of my own, it too will be resold in 60 or 70 years when I ultimately pass because I don't have generational money. So I guess the only thing that makes me sad is that Paul Allen had generational wealth, no kids, and a cool computer museum. I'm not judging anyone for how they choose to spend their money, but I wish it could have worked out differently. The other folks I feel sorry for are the people that donated computers or artifacts to the museum or sold them cheaply on the presumption that now they would have a permanent home. I don't know if there's such a thing as donator's remorse, but if there is, I suspect a few people are experiencing its sting about now. Now, if you or somebody you know might be on the autism spectrum, please check out the free sample of my new book on Amazon, The Non-Visible Part of the Autism Spectrum. It's intended for folks that don't have an autism diagnosis, but who suspect they might be somewhere on the autism spectrum. It's everything I know now about living your best life on the autism spectrum that I wish I'd known long ago. In the meantime and in between time, I hope to see you next time, right here in Dave's Garage.